Hey there, friend. You're listening to the Hot Mess Hotline, and this is Stephanie Cremens. You are in the right place if you are an ambitious leader who's charged with delivering on the tech of the future right now. Or AI, AI, AI. In order to do that, you and your team need to upskill in the process and tackle old problems in new ways. In the past, we would have called this change management and leadership development. But quite frankly, change is now the air that we breathe, and your team needs a unified strategy for the 21st century. That's what we have for you here. These are executive-level conversations that are nuanced, insightful, and full of hard-earned lessons by other CEOs so that you can put into practice exactly what you learned today as soon as this episode is over. Remember, small tweaks have huge impact, so take what's new and useful to you and leave the rest. Today's conversation is with Kerry Siggins. She is the CEO of StoneAge, a fast-growing, employee-owned manufacturing and technology company based in Colorado. In 2023, Kerry was named EY Entrepreneur of the Year and Colorado's CEO of the Year. During her 17-year and counting tenure, Kerry has led StoneAge through 3 major transitions, while also continuously building a dynamic culture where employees actually want to work, or as you'll hear in this conversation, in a culture that doesn't suck. She is also the author of a new book out called The Ownership Mindset, a handbook for transforming your life and leadership. That is exactly why Kerry and I connected, not only in this conversation, but over on her podcast, which we've linked to here, that I want you to get in on. But now, let's dig into Kerry's story and the powerful journey that she has taken from overdose to amazing success in 2024 and beyond. Let's go. All right, Kerry, my new friend, tell me about your hot mess.
Oh my gosh. I've had a few of them, but my biggest hot mess is from my 20s. So I developed substance abuse issues when I was about 22, right out of college. A lot of different reasons leading up to that, which I've spent a lot of time in therapy and coaching to figure out why I made so many stupid choices. But ultimately, it led me to a really dark place. So in 2006, it was the worst year of my life, and I was definitely dealing with substance abuse. I decided that I've always been high functioning user, and so I'm very driven, very ambitious, and just had this like dark habit that I kept a secret. And I decided that I was going to do a figure competition, which is basically like a bodybuilding competition. So you go and you lift weights, and it's not like the big bulky, but you basically have men, grading your body.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Lots of toxicity, exactly,
Yes,
and you really have to manage everything that you eat. And that combined with substance abuse issues, it just really caused me to spiral. And I remember the summer of 2006, I called my mom and I told her, I was like, I ate a cookie. I'm not going to be able to do this figure competition. I'm going to be so fat. And she was like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to yourself? But I just was this mess of this jumbled sense of self. I didn't know who I was. I thought I had to be somebody different. I thought I had to be skinny to be lovable. And on Labor Day of 2006, I actually accidentally overdosed. And that was the most important day of my life. It was a huge inflection point in my life. It was when I said, okay, that's it. I have to figure this out. I'm either going to choose to live or choose to die. And so that was the start of the journey to where I am now, completely thriving. It'll be 18 years this September. And so, that was my hot mess, and it has led to so many good things. So I have no regrets, and I've worked through a lot of the shame that I felt. And it was such an important moment in my life. And I have a ton of gratitude for it, but it's taken me a while to be able to say that.
Oh, I totally get all of that. I feel that. What are some of the moments looking back at that time in your life? There's a saying that things don't happen to you, they happen for you. What are some of those things from that time in your life that you would say, oh, thank you for happening for me so that you have the insight you now have?
Yeah. So the biggest one is that I understand how the world works. And I think that I'm always been book smart, but I'm street smart, and I am really grateful for that. And I think that it helps me be relatable. So I run a 200-person company, and lots of people struggle with all kinds of issues, substance abuse being one of them. And I've had employees come to me and share their stories and ask for help because they know that I get it. That I understand. In fact, several years ago, I had an employee call me from Las Vegas, and he had gotten himself in trouble, and he was contemplating suicide. And he said, I didn't know anybody else to call, but I knew you would understand. And so I helped him, get back to Colorado, and I helped him figure out what had happened. And it was a much bigger thing that actually turned out really, really well. But having that kind of relatability and making it safe for people to come and say, hey, I know that you've been through something similar. Can you help me? I think has been really powerful. So that's one of the really good things that have come out of it, is that I get how the world works. It takes a lot to pull something past me because I did all of those things that I thought I was pulling past people.
Yes.
But I think it makes me really relatable. So that's just one of them, and I think it's been it's really powerful. It's helped me stay grounded, especially as I've been more and more successful in my career. I never want to forget where I came from. I never want to forget hitting rock bottom. I will never forget that good people do bad things, and I'll never forget that bad people have really redeeming qualities. And I am so glad that I learned that about life.
Wow. So since then, your life, your career has taken just a complete upward trajectory. And I'm sure on the outside, everyone thinks it just kind of goes like this. And we all know as humans, it's more like this, down and up, but we're trending up.
Yeah.
Where have you used the lessons of recovering as an addict to then become successful as a CEO?
Yeah. So, I think one of it is understanding the intensity of which I do everything in life. And so, and when I was in a toxic, dark place, that intensity showed up in really negative ways, had really negative consequences. And so I had to learn a lot about where that intensity comes from and how to channel that into something that's much more positive, but also how to be able to dial it back, because not everybody wants to deal with my intensity all the time.
Yes.
And to be honest, I don't really want to deal with my intensity all the time. So I think that's a really important lesson that I've had to learn is first having that self-awareness and that self-reflection to understand where that came from, and then working on myself and developing tools to be able to use it in a positive way instead of a negative way, and also how to be able to be more content in the moment without constantly having to do and push so that it's healthier for me and for the people around me. And I think that my intensity has absolutely driven my success because, as my husband says it, I'm the most driven, ambitious person that on the planet, which I was like, hey, no, there's way worse than me. Like, look at Elon Musk, for example. Like, he's me times like 1,000.
That's
so it has some really good things, but it can also have some dark sides to it too if you don't try to find more of that balance in your life. So I think that's been a big one. And it's been really important in my leadership journey because I want people to want to be part of my team and want to be part of the vision that I have for the company. And I have to not just think about how people experience me, but I want people to think about how they experience themselves in the presence of my leadership. And that intensity has to be, the sharp edges have to be smoothed. I've learned along the way.
Oh my gosh. I am right now. I'm just going, thank you, universe, for this conversation. Because I'm going to ask you all the questions that I need to hear the answers to right now. But we also, we work with a lot of overachievers, that, I talk about the difference between overachieving and high achieving. High achieving is great. And that is where we should strive to be most of the time. Overachieving is that striving, that too intense, the sharp edges that cut yourself and other people, the perfectionism, the I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough voice.
Yeah.
How do you know when you have tipped into overachieving and the too much, the too, and I say that in bad ways. I don't always say too much in bad ways, but the too much, the too driven, the I'm going it alone, hell or high water kind of phase?
Yeah, I mean, I really have to pay attention to the cues of the people around me. And I also pay attention to what my body is telling me. So in terms of the people around me, I've developed, I'm a self-aware enough person to be able to see when people are like, ooh, that's moving too fast. And so I really try to pick up on those cues, but I've also created a team that can hold me accountable to saying, hey, we're moving too fast. And I've also learned the benefit of slowing down and making sure that we are very methodical in what we're doing and we're very focused in what we're doing, because I want to achieve, I want to be successful. But when you're trying to do too many things at once or move too fast, it's actually counterproductive and you get the opposite of what you want. So I think developing that self-awareness to be able to say, like, I just overwhelmed that person. I can see by the look of their face, they're like, what's going on here? And then building those trusted relationships with people who experience me, the brunt of me, to be able to say, too fast, we got to figure this out. Let's slow down. And so that's those are some of the things that I've done to help that. And then my body also, I think our bodies tell us so much.
Yes.
But often overachievers, high achievers, people who aren't in tune, they don't realize what their body's telling them. And so whenever I start to feel like, oh, like my back is like super tight and sore right now, and I've got a ton of stuff that's going on, I was like, that's my body telling me that I need to actually just slow down a little bit. So how do I get a little bit more sleep? Instead of working out, I'm going to do yoga today. I'm going to take a couple of days off to decompress because I'm feeling that tightness in my body. And that's telling me something that I'm pushing too hard. So really trying to have that body awareness is a good signal.
That is wonderful. We're going to talk about here in a second, the several times you've transformed your company and grew it. But staying in this theme of you're hearing from your people that it's too much, it's too fast. That's something we hear too in our work. And I don't know the definition of too much, too fast, culture by culture. Only the culture gets to determine what that means. Sometimes that is quite literally just a defense mechanism to change itself. Mm-hmm. As a leader, not as a human, carry the human, carry the leader. How do you balance and invite people along, pull people along when it's guys like, you may think it's too fast, but I do need you to notch it up about 10% and I'll notch it down 10%. How do you lead your people through that?
We have exactly those conversations. I just had one this morning. So we were going through, we're going through a pretty aggressive product roadmap and launch schedule. And our timelines have gotten extended as they typically do. And,
yes.
And so I was asking questions around, all right, so, one, the why, and then two, how do we make sure that we're building better schedules? And then it's like, look, this is the drop dead date. And this is a completely reasonable drop dead date. But if we don't hit this date, we're going to blow a huge opportunity. And so we need to figure out right now, we're going to be right up against it. How do we take some of these things out of the time out of the timeline to be able to speed this up and present back to me? Is it you need an extra resource? Do you need some different tools? What is it that you need to be able to shave a month off of this so that we're not so close? Because there's no doubt, we have to hit this, and it's not going to be good for us as a company if we don't. So it's just super pragmatic conversations to be able to say, okay, I understand why all this happened. I get it. And I can appreciate it. And I want to acknowledge it. Yeah. And we still have to figure out a way to speed it up. We can't add 3 months to the schedule. You can add a month and a half to the schedule. What do you need? You need to tell me, what do you need to be able to make this happen?
Yes.
Because I've also learned, you just can't, it's just, otherwise people are just working longer hours and getting resentful and all of those things. So having them be part of that solution rather than me figure it out allows them to be able to come back and say, okay, if we had a part-time, half another headcount right here, we would be able to meet this deadline. Or if we took this project off of the priority list, we'd be able to do it. Great. Then I can help make that decision. But they were the ones who were able to come up with what that solution or the potential solutions could be. So that's how I try to work through it. I still hold people accountable. I make sure that they understand the why. Like everybody understands the why of why this deadline is really important. And then I think I'm very reasonable in saying, okay, bring to me some suggestions on how we can get it done. And it's not just like this, I don't care how you get it done, just get it done. I think that scares people and it doesn't create a collaborative environment where leaders show that they understand the real challenges that teams face to do complex product design, system design, process design, whatever it is you're creating.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, that is so good. Because it's when we say we don't have time, we can't meet the deadline, we're just pointing to one resource, which is time, and says like, this is the end all be all. And maturing organizations, mature leaders understand, actually, we've got 7 levers to pull here. Yes, time is one. People resources are another, money resources are another, saying no to something is another, which is usually the most powerful one, quite frankly, especially for me, I should say. But again, the too ambitious, the folks that want to do too fast, we say, oh yeah, we can knock out 5 things in 6 months, when it's, well, really, we can knock out 3 things in 6 months.
Yeah. And I've had to really learn that, right? We see the world through our own lens, and it's very hard to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And I've had to learn that people just do not operate at my pace for the most part. And me expecting them to, me wishing that they would, doesn't change that. People operate at the pace of which they operate. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't be pushed and stretched. And I try to do that in a really healthy way. But I had to learn early on in my days that people just don't move as fast as me. And even though I don't feel like I'm moving fast, I don't feel like I'm moving fast. That is not how other people experience me. So I think that having that self-awareness and that realization, it makes it easier on everybody to say, okay, we're going to figure it out. We're going to do a little bit less than what I was hoping we were going to do, but we're going to do it better. And the team is going to be healthier, and people are going to have a lot more fun, and they're going to feel really proud and rewarded when they get the project done versus trying to cram a couple more things on. In the reality, probably don't really matter that much.
Yes. Yes. I learned early on, we have to ask ourselves prioritization questions through the lens of, will this matter in 10 days, 10 months, or 10 years? And I think I borrowed that from Martha Beck, so I want to give the right credit. But that really keeps things in perspective for me. If it goes out mid Q1 versus end of Q1, in 10 years, it doesn't matter.
Nope, definitely not.
Yep. But losing an entire year's worth of revenue because it went out in Q2, that will matter, because that compounds differently. Yes.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking this question is because obviously addiction issues are very rampant in our society, and we keep them hidden in most cases, but a lot of us are dealing with an addiction of some sort, or an addictive system, or a family member who's addictive. What did you learn in the recovery process about giving yourself and others grace that you get to now practice every day?
Yeah. I mean, the first fundamental thing is that you have to own it, and you have to decide, like, I am here because of me. And that is not to put yourself down, to beat yourself up. You have to do it. I'm here because of me. And by owning that and admitting it, I'm empowering myself to start to do something that is different. And so, that doesn't necessarily seem like a super compassionate way to approach it, but I feel like it is, because for me, I was blaming other people. Yes. I was blaming situations, and I was letting myself off the hook. And once I just said, okay, I'm responsible for everything that happens in my life. I'm responsible for every decision that I made to get me to this point. And yes, I might have had past trauma and past things that have led to some of these behaviors. It's an excuse if I say those are the reasons why, and I have to own it. And then when I started to own it, then I could start to actually look at my behaviors and say, and understand those behaviors and say, okay, this is why I made that decision. And now how do I change that? How do I forgive that? How do I address it? Go back and apologize, whatever it is. And so I think that compassion, that grace has to come with accountability if you really want to change your life. And so I did a lot of things that I'm not proud of, and I hurt people that I felt terrible about. But instead of burying my head in the sand or beating myself up and just saying, I can never change and I'm never going to be able to fix those relationships, I owned it and said, okay, I really screwed up and I'm going to go back and I'm going to apologize to all of those people who I hurt. And I'm going to figure out how to love myself so that I can apologize to myself and forgive myself.
Yeah.
So I think that accountability and responsibility just has to come into play, but not as a weapon, as a way to say, I love myself enough, even if it's just a tiny little fraction, because I hated myself back then.
Oh.
But I was like, you know what? This is the piece I'm going to hang on to. I know I have potential to do something really important in life, and that's what I'm going to figure out. That's what I'm going to hold on to and be accountable to being that kind of person as I'm in recovery.
Wow. So right. And I mean, that's the quote. That is the quote. I think this is going to be the title of the episode, not using accountability as a weapon, because it's not.
No. And so many people use it that way, and they also look at it that way, but it's not. It's a way to be able to say, I did the things that I said that I was going to do.
Yes.
I am going to be the kind of person who looks at myself in the mirror and says, okay, here are the good things and here are the things that I need to work on, and not put my head in the sand. Without, this is my book, right? The ownership mindset. Like without the ownership mindset of like, I am responsible for every single thing that happens in my life. Things don't happen to me. They happen because of me or for me. And I'm going to choose to look at every adversity as a gift, as an opportunity for growth. Oh my God, you can just change your life. And if you've been living in a victim mentality, it's hard to start to say, okay, this something really bad did happen to me, or I am a victim of this, but I can still choose to show up in a different way. Yes. And so you don't hold it as a weapon against yourself. You don't hold it as a weapon against anybody else. You use it as a kind, loving tool for growth.
Yes. And how does it feel when you choose to be accountable?
Oh, it can feel mixed. It can feel very empowering, but it can also be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right. I think when people, and that's why people avoid it, is because it does feel uncomfortable. But anybody who says like, oh, it's just this a great thing. Like, no, sometimes it's really crappy. Like, okay, like I screwed up. I got to hold myself accountable to this. I have to go own it. And it is going to feel icky for a little bit. But once you get through to the other side, it is so empowering, and you build relationships and you realize like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Actually, really good things came from it. But let's be real. I mean, anybody who's like, I'm holding myself accountable to this right now, there's some feelings of ick at first. We do. We want to, we want to deflect or blame or put our head in the sand, because that might feel like we are getting rid of that ickiness in the moment. But what we don't realize is that builds up over time, and it damages relationships, whether with other people or with ourselves, because we know like I didn't do what I said I was going to do, or I really screwed up on that and I blamed somebody else. And the consequences of not being accountable, that just builds up over time. And then here you are 10 years later with a drug problem or whatever your issue is.
Yes.
And you realize like, oh man, that is what a lack of accountability just created for me in my life.
Yes. Yes. Well, and you said, you're adding some new words to my vocabulary too, right? This happens because of me. That sense of ownership is so freeing, empowering, and, joy-giving, life-giving. Yeah. And that feels much better than the shame and the guilt and the blaming that you can carry around if you don't choose accountability. And I want joy. I want life. I want optimism. I want peace. I want freedom over beating myself and others up, because it sucks.
I agree. I agree. And you just have to lean into it, and you have to
Yes.
lean into those uncomfortable moments so that you can feel that freedom. Me owning all of those things that happened in my life, going back and apologizing, to everybody who I could find. There certainly wasn't everybody who I could go back to and own all of it. It was really hard, and it was really emotional. And I had to do a lot of work to forgive myself for the decisions that I made. But now here I am 18 years on the other side. And it's like, I'm so glad I did that difficult work.
Yes.
And here's the reality of life is that it's hard.
Yes.
And the only way that we get good at doing hard things is to do hard things. And
Yep.
I know that because of what I went through and how I was accountable for those decisions, and I went back and I owned everything that I possibly could. And it was difficult, and I leaned into the difficultness of it. I am a much better human. I have so much more self-esteem. I know that I can get through anything that life throws at me, but you have to go do that work. And so I think people, they don't realize that. They're like, I want this kind of life, but they don't really want to go have to do the hard things that you have to do to create that kind of life. And that's the human journey. It's to do that work. It's to lean into the uncomfortableness so that you can develop as a human being and find more joy and more happiness and more self-esteem in life.
Yep. For those who are just, aspiring to have a high achieving career with meaning and purpose, and, hopefully that comes with the title and some wealth. Those are good things too. But, they want to be full on accountable, yet they're not going to go through the addict's journey and the addict's recovery. What are your tips for embracing accountability as a maturing adult, entering midlife and beyond?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is that it's nobody's responsibility for helping you find your purpose and meaning. It's yours. And I think a lot of people look at their companies, at their bosses, at their cultures to say, oh, I don't have meaning and purpose in my work. And so it's somehow their fault. No one can find your purpose for you but you. And so quit looking for your boss to do that or your company to do that. How I found purpose in work. And luckily, I think a lot of us stumble into it. Some of us are lucky enough to, figure it out early on. But I think most of us stumble into it, and we stumble into it.
I would say like the 3 people in the whole world that found it early on. Yes. The rest of us stumbled into it.
We stumble, right?
Yes.
But I think it's because you have to try things. And I think a lot of people are scared to try new things. And so if you aren't happy in your role, in your job, if you don't find meaning and purpose in it, then don't stay in it. And I know that sounds maybe a little bit harsh, or maybe that's a hard thing to do. There are certainly people who don't have opportunities like I've had. But the reality is that we are still in charge of our lives. And if we do not find purpose and meaning in our work, then we have to go figure that out. And how we do that is by experimenting, by trying different things, by getting good at our job. I did lots of jobs that were not part of my purpose, but because I chose to do them really well, I gained skills, I gained resiliency, I learned how to practice, how to master something. And those skills helped me then when I started to find things that were more joyful for me to do the work. So, yes, let's say that you're working in a fast food job. It's like, how do I find purpose and meaning in it? Well, get good at it. Just be like, I'm going to be the very best that I can be at this. And I'm going to learn how to hold myself accountable, and I'm going to learn how to master these skills, and I'm going to learn how to have a smile on my face and give great service even when I feel like crap. All of those things are going to help you when you say, okay, this isn't for me. I'm going to go try something different. And learning those skills of resiliency and mastery and pushing through, persevering to grow yourself will absolutely help you figure it out. So experiment. If you're not happy in your job, go look for a new one. If you're not happy in your job, figure out still how to get really good at it so that you can gain those other skills that you can then eventually take on when you say, okay, I'm going to go try something different in my life.
Yes, yes. And paying attention to what brings you joy and what brings you frustration, those are equal lessons to learn. And I just want to add in there, and this is top of mind. So I have an 8-month-old right now, and many folks at my age are kind of the opposite end of parenting, which is fine. So they've lived this, but they see it in everyone who's learning. There's a frustration that comes with learning that you only learn the lessons once you get to the other side. And so I see it with my 8-month-old. He's trying to crawl and stand up. And so he lets out these guttural screams because he's so frustrated because he wants to crawl. And the first couple times he did it, I thought he was in pain. So I was picking him up and moving him. I was like, oh, he's learning. He's frustrated. And so I've got to let him sit in the frustration so he can learn what he needs to learn. And for human beings, that is the way of learning. Like, it doesn't change. And so as adults, we've somehow tricked ourselves into believing if I'm frustrated, it's too hard, or it's too fast, or it's too much, or it's too something, or I'm not enough, or I'm not smart enough. And it's no, frustration is just part of the learning curve. Choose to get past the frustration, then you can choose and just to find the lessons in it. Because you don't know what those are yet, you're still learning. And so again, as adults, sit in the frustration because it's telling you something.
Yep, totally agree.
Let's focus in on your career, because you truly have transformed your company. You have risen the ranks to lead it in some new directions for the 21st century. Give us a high-level overview of the strategies you've deployed in recent years to bring your company up to speed in the 21st century and take it beyond.
Yeah. So we manufacture industrial cleaning equipment, high-tech squirt guns on steroids. So water jetting. So the pressure washer that you use at home, that's maybe a couple thousand PSIs to be able to, clean bird poop off of your concrete.
Yes.
Our tools start at 2,500 and go up to 40,000 PSI. So for industrial applications. So our products are used in refineries, chemical plants, food processing plants, shipyards, anywhere you'd use ultra high pressure water to clean something. And so the company was started on nozzles, self-rotary nozzles. So the power and the pressure and the flow of the water spin the nozzle, which makes it easier to blast stuff off of pipes and surfaces and all kinds of things. In 2013, we made the decision that we needed to build automated systems. And so we started with mechanized systems, a control box that you're feeding, a hose down a pipe with a tool at the end. And that's really transformed now into building autonomous robotics that now can do cleaning with the push of a button.
Wow.
Not robots that set themselves up. This is not like humanoid robots, but robotics that are making it easier for people to do this work, fewer people to have to do it, because nobody really wants to go into industrial cleaning. So we have a massive labor shortage in our industry. So we've just really transitioned from like making these manual tools now to computerized cleaning systems that produce data. We have a software application that allows our customers to be able to go in and see exactly what's happening real time, and we're planning on building that out. So our vision is to have computerized industrial cleaning solutions in every major heavy industrial facility worldwide by 2040. And so that's a big, lofty goal. And we have our tools in every facility, but not everybody has adopted automation, especially outside of the US and Europe, where labor is still less expensive than buying these automated systems. But our goal is to really drive the industry towards computerized technology because it's safer, it's more efficient, it uses less water, and you don't have to use as many people, which is a big issue for us. We just don't have a ton of people coming into the industry. So that's part of my grand vision.
Ooh, I love it. It's succinct. It's clear. I can see it, and I'm not in your industry, but I see it. I understand it. What kind of leader do you need to be to get your company from here to 2040?
I think two things. One, very strategic, which I think is the blend of visionary leadership, right? As this big vision with how do you actually execute, and that kind of that combination of management leadership. So, really being able to balance the vision and then the actual okay, how do I build a team to get this done, to execute? So I think you got to be a really strategic leader. I think that I have to be ambidextrous, meaning that I've got to be able to hold competing ideas in my brain at the same time. Yes. We are transitioning from, our core business has always been tools, and now it's getting more commoditized. There's more competition in the industry, and it's hard to let that stuff go. It's like, that's what made us who we are. Yes. But the reality is that's not who we're going to be. And as that has become red ocean, we have to go create the new blue ocean. And so how do you exploit the core, not just give up on it, but really reduce costs and be super efficient in that old space that we were in. So you don't just completely give up on it, but all the innovation happens in this more computerized equipment, which requires different thinking, different business models, different team structures.
Yes.
And so you've got to be able to do both of those, right? Exploit the core and explore the new growth. And those can be two very different types of activities that make each of those successful. So I think ambidextrous is another one. And then finally, culture. We're an employee-owned company, and I believe that we are where we are today because of our employees. And I put my employees first, because when you put your employees first as an organization, they will put your customers first. And so, as we grow and scale, how do we make sure that we always keep our culture at the forefront of our strategy and not turn into some big company that sucks to work for?
Just to put it real bluntly like that. I love that. Oh my gosh. And so what are you going to ask your people to own in the next 15-ish years?
That own our growth, own our scale. Our big corporate goal at the holding company level is to create 1,000 millionaires through employee ownership. And we can only do that if we do it together. So it's living our values. Our values are very clear. Practice self-leadership, be a great teammate, and deliver on the StoneAge Assurance Promise. And so if everybody is really, truly living those values and trying their very best to be the best self-leader, the best teammate, and the best steward of the company, that is what owning it looks like for us. And so we have to teach people how to do that. Not everybody comes in and is like, ooh, I feel comfortable giving my boss feedback. Well, we're a feedback-oriented culture, so we're going to teach you how to do it.
Yep.
Not everybody feels comfortable speaking up and say, I screwed up here. A lot of people get punished for doing that. So we have to really train people and educate people on the own it mindset and our culture, and those behaviors that might have been faux pas or even dangerous in another organization are celebrated and expected in ours. And so I expect my employees to adopt and to live and breathe the own it mindset, because it really does focus on self, team, and the overall company. And I think we can do fantastic things when people show up with that mindset.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. All right. So for those listening in, I'm going to put in the show notes the link to, so the reason Kerry and I got connected is because I was on her podcast and we were like, we have to have this conversation over here on the Hot Mess Hotline. We got to get that book out there, all of those things. So we'll put that in the show notes because I want you all to listen to that. And Kerry talks more about the term ambidextrous as a leader, and which I think is unbelievably intelligent. Being able to hold both and at the same time is an unbelievably powerful leadership quality. Kerry, as we wrap up here, what is kind of this one powerful action step that you would recommend to leaders to help their culture truly own it?
I think it starts with trust. If you want to create an ownership mindset within your organization, it starts with trust. And there's 3 aspects of trust. First, you have to trust yourself.
Yes.
And that means that you have, the self-confidence to look at yourself and say, I can do hard things. I can make this decision. I can be a leader who's worth following. I trust myself. Then the second thing is that you have to trust others. People are not going to show up and give their very best and truly own it if they don't feel trusted by their leader. Yes. And so you have to build that trust. And that's building relationships, having one-on-ones with your team, asking for their input, giving them, saying, I trust you enough to make this decision. I trust you enough to figure out the how. I'm going to give you the what. I trust you enough to give to you to figure out the how to do it. That is how you build that trust with your employees, which then makes them say, okay, I'm going to give more. My manager trusts me. My manager believes in me. Yep. That makes me believe more in myself. And then the third part is to be trustworthy. You have to be a trustworthy person. You have to do what you say that you're going to do. You need to be consistent in the way you show up. If you're happy and positive one day and then grumpy and yelling at your employees the other day, people don't know what to expect from you. And so they're always on eggshells. So consistency matters with being trustworthy. Making ethical decisions. being transparent about the decisions that you make. Yep. Those are all aspects of being trustworthy. So if you want to have the ownership mindset within your company and you want people to show up for more than just a paycheck, whether that's just on your team or if you run a company, you really have to think about trust from those three lenses. Trust yourself, trust others, and be trustworthy.
So good. Thank you so much for this conversation, round two. I needed this today. And I know others do. Thank you. So good. So good. Nothing like having a newborn in your early 40s to make you recalibrate your life.
Yes. I mean, my son is 11 and I remember those days. And so they're so much fun, but they're also, they can be really challenging, but you're going to learn so much.
Totally. It's, to have your heart live outside your body is just a different way of being in the world and just puts things in a different lens. Yes.
Yep. I totally agree with you. Yep. Motherhood is one of the best things that I ever have done.
Oh, so good to hear. So good to hear. All right. Well, Kerry, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. This has been so much fun to be on the show.
Awesome. My friend, to say that Kerry is full of strength and resilience is an understatement. I want to share with you the phrase that I learned at the beginning of my coaching journey, but Kerry brought a new spin that I think is even more powerful. I learned things happen for you, and she said things happen because of you. We are all change makers, difference makers, leverage makers. Own that presence in the world. There is such a thing as being too humble. And a lot of leaders that we work with are too humble. Own the fact that things happen because of you, because you show up, because you choose to lead. The second one is pull more levers in order to be successful. Kerry gave such a great example of the story of someone comes and says, we need more time. Well, you can have a little bit more time, but what are the other levers, the other resources that you can pull in to not just extend by 3 months, maybe only extend the timeline by 30 days, but that means adding resources in other areas and hopefully also saying no to other seemingly pressing priorities, which in the long run may not be as pressing as some of the most powerful initiatives on your team's plate. Third, remember that it is your job to know your purpose. And so when you're feeling the pressure of your workplace isn't giving you as much as you would like in your career, that means you need to go on the search, not your manager. And as a manager, because I know we've got a ton of leaders listening in here, remember that if you're feeling that pressure from your employee, remind them that they are the CEO of their life. You're not the CEO of their life. They are the CEO of their life. If they're not feeling fulfilled, they need to go on the hunt to feel fulfilled. There's only so much as their employer, as a company, as their manager that you can do to support them. Can you support them in finding their purpose? Absolutely. But it's always their responsibility. All right, my friend, if you are trying to find more of the levers that you want to pull inside of your organization to drive change, if you're feeling like things are going too fast or too slow, we can help you with that. I want you to pop onto this website and complete one of the assessments that we make available to you for free just to get the conversation started so you can figure out what that tension is in your organization. If things aren't working at the right speed, we have the answer. We call it the orange print. All right, now, my friend, let's take these lessons that you learned today about owning it, about being a leverage maker, a difference maker, take them back into your work, and I'll see you soon, my friend.